Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next audio podcast series under the Labztorm Impact. This is the Labztorm Impact v.2. This is the Shientist, and today's audio podcast is around studying medicine, a fair process for graduate mature candidate applicants in the UK. This is a Storm Robotics production in collaboration with the Renal Patient Support Group, the RPSG. And before I go ahead, this work was published back in 2013 in an online journal, and has also been has been prepared for a conference that's taking place at some time during this year. And so I thought I'd take the opportunity to highlight the work in an overview. In an overview. So a little bit about the premise of this work. So um, so foremost of importance is to state that studying medicine is indeed very popular, and this has also increased competition and making it more challenging for some more than others. Evidence suggests that there are more applicants applying to study medicine than institutions can accept, despite the initiation of extra of what are known as extra requirements, such as aptitude investigations or aptitude tests. And publication retrospectively in by Parry and team in around 2006 highlighted this. A study has been conducted to inform of the candidate application process used by English schools to help identify forthcoming students into medicine, and of particular importance, especially when reflecting on patient care, as the following. So to admission, different approaches to admissions should be developed and tested. And Parry and team sort of highlight that in their publication in 2006. Some medical schools select a proportion of applicants to their degrees or their medical programs through an interview. Remaining applicants are identified on what's known as a chance-weighted process for academic attainment. There's there's a publication by Bohr and team in 2005, and Lumsden and team in 2005 as well around this. The application and admission process would be accurate if it's geared around selecting which secondary school leavers or A-level school leaver applicants will make better doctors than other A-level school leaver or applicants. In context, if the same entry criteria for mature applicants or graduates are used as school leavers, then there is discrimination against them. Now, because presently there is a single application scheme, so presently, at least retrospectively, and still presently via the what's known as the University and College Admission Service, or UCAS. in the UK. Now, this can potentially cause issues in the process generally. Mature or graduate applicants who are not getting recognized, though they may meet the traditional entry criteria and have excellent potential, are left in dismay. And there is some works that highlight some of this context, by Bohr and team in 2005 and Lumsden and team in 2005 as well. The objective of for medical admissions is to select applicants, both A-level school leavers and mature or graduates, graduate applicants who will achieve and comprise of good doctors. Yes, of good doctors. Now, entry to medicine in the UK is based on academic endeavour. The process often being inexplicable. Much has changed in terms of the candidate criteria, but application to study medicine are still overwhelming. Much has changed in terms of the medical criteria. Much has changed in terms of the candidate criteria, but applicants to study medicine are still overwhelming. Indefinitely, the admissions and selection process should exclude all applicants who will bring the profession into impertinence. So, citing literature, it was interesting to identify the following. So, in another paper publication, in the paper publication by Lumsden and team in 2005, the direct quotation as follows: high academic achievement in school leaving examinations has been shown to predict success in empathy. Now, there is potential prejudice in selecting applicants generally, because presently it can potentially mean that institutions could be selecting applicants based on comparing two cohorts of applicants by their A levels. So thus a mature candidate or graduate may have achieved in many areas, but this is not recognized by medical admissions. There are better ways testing whether a graduate will be a good doctor, which are not available for A-level school leavers. Definitely graduate applicants should encompass a range of attributes. So the aim of this work was thus: the aim here was to inform that graduate or mature applicants should anticipate a separate application process to that of A-level school leavers. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the National Health Service. So before highlighting the main issues surrounding this aim, it's quite important that insight regarding the National Health Service, that what it requires in today's practice and today's doctors and its core principles. Since its launch in 1948, the National Health Service has grown to become the world's largest publicly funded health service. It is also one efficient, most egalitarian, and most comprehensive. The NHS, the National Health Service, was born out of a long-held ideal that good healthcare should be available to all, regardless of wealth. The NHS care offers everything from screening and routine treatments for coughs and colds to renal transplantation, surgery, accident and emergency treatment, and end-of-life care. Three main core principles around the National Health Service include: number one, that it meets the needs of everyone, that it be free at the point of delivery, and that it be based on clinical need. And when it was launched by then, at the time, the Minister of Health, Anya Bevan, on July 5th, 1948, the National Health Service was based on these principles. The NHS mission was thus twofold in addition. Number one was, we believe that patients' needs and experiences are the first and uppermost consideration, and experience are the first and uppermost consideration, and the best outcomes result when patients, their carers and relatives and staff are active in decision taking. Number two, when we believe in the continuous improvement in everything we do, and that staff dealing with patients, their families and each other should be conducted with courtesy, professionalism, integrity, openness and respect. So these are along with the National Health Service core principles, there's the National Health Service missions. So those were the two main missions of the National Health Service. In March 2011, the Department of Health published the National Health Service Constitution. The National Health Constitution covers principles of the NHS and rights to the NHS patient. The rights cover how to access health services, the quality care patients would receive, the information, treatments and programs available, confidentiality and right to complain if issues are apparent. The National Health Service Constitution is renewed every 10 years with involvement from health professionals, public and of course patients. This context is important to acknowledge because all medical applicants or matriculants should be aware of these principles and have a working understanding of what patient care really means. At the same time, quintessentially, in medical schools, admission teams also need to reflect on these principles to avoid potential scrutiny. I'm now going to talk a little bit about studying medicine frameworks and guidelines. So medicine is an intense career pathway, and the literature informs that clinicians now need to be able to reflect basic science into practice and patient involvement in research. There's some context by Thompson and Evans in 2009 around this. In what is known as the Took report in 2007, the Took report in 2007 may also be familiar in some regard. It's available through a particular website, and I will highlight some references and citations towards the end. The report outlines governance and training doctors in aspiration for excellence, and the Royal College of Physicians inform how there will be more responsibility for future doctors. In this respect, mature and graduate applicants should not be judged by looking at them on paper, at least not in the present application system. Indeed, the larger role of a doctor requires further comprehension by the school leavers who are premature in the understanding of collaboration and research. Explicitly, research experiences with internships are are just as important in academic standing. Collaboration and research is important since they are continuous measures. So I'm going to say this again. Collaboration and research is important since they are continuous measures, and and should a graduate candidate, for example, possess such capabilities, these should highlight their competency and integrity to study medicine. As one as one of its roles, the Medical Schools Council governs medical education. So what does this present? What does what? The question is now, what does the present application process involve, and how should this relate to the National Health Service? So at present, the application process involves all applicants applying through one system, the UCAS, and this is the British admission service for students applying to university and college generally, including post-16 education. The UCAS process is used by both A-level school leavers and graduate mature applicants, and applicants who want to apply to study medicine have to demonstrate they have discipline, rigor, perseverance, motivation, and determination. Applicants must also highlight that they understand various medical career pathways, and that they also require patience, compassion, and empathy, with a variety of supplementary personal quality indicators, respectively. There's works published around aspects around that, dating back all the way to dating back in 2011, publication by Anderson and team in 2011, but also more historically by Arnold and team in 1987. The current policy utilizes a range of general criteria that applicants must fulfill, including academic achievements. And that is academic achievements. So, for example, cognitive measures, coupled with internships, voluntary work, and an understanding in entities of medicine, etc. For the secondary education applicant, the expectation is to achieve admirable A-level qualifications. Several citations or references inform of the present application process. If a graduate and mature applicant is fortunate enough to reach the interview process, then this ranges from what is known as mini objective structured clinical examinations, or OSCE, to general questioning, including the well-known why do you want to study medicine? What characteristics do you think make a good doctor? How would you contribute in medicine? And not forgetting probably the most important question, what do you think a doctor's role should be? Medical institutions are now stressing the number of hours doctors face as part of their general admission declaration, but many applicants, both A-level school leavers and mature graduate candidates wanting to study medicine, acknowledge this. There's a publication by Powys and team in 2004, and Bembasa and Bomo in 2007, that highlights some more context around that. Further clarity is thus required on this intricate aspects of the entry criteria and selection to preclude the source of selection bias, prejudice, or preferring the benefit to one applicant over another for improper reasons. I'm now going to talk a little bit about some of the contentions or present issues or complications. So traditionally in both the United States and Canada, medicine is read as a postgraduate degree. In the United Kingdom, graduate entry programs in some part are still in their infancy, at least in in some context. This paper was published in 2013. We're now in 2022, and graduate entry programs to some extent are still learning from experiences to some extent. So they're still in in their infancy. In analyzing the general 5 to 6 year curriculum versus the 4-year graduate entry program, one of the main features amongst a graduate entry program is the strong emphasis of interprofessional working and its accelerated nature, coupled with the research ethos. The Russell Group, or RG, explains their policy on medical admissions as on their website. If more accurate ways of selecting graduate entrants are not implemented, the selection is based on criteria which are irrelevant. And so relating the application process is not transparent enough, and it seems to disrespect the mature graduate candidate having any qualification at all. So indeed, the right candidate will value the NHS principles, professional conduct, integrity, honesty, and have research aptitude of scientific approaches to clinical dilemmas. An excellent candidate will have good explanations in how to better current practices through collaborations and patient user involvement. These now being crucial in health in health practice context. So unequivocally, all applicants should know where they would like to envisage a medical career. Indeed, tests could be implemented to give a more accurate picture of whether a graduate will be a good doctor, other than applying the A-level school leaver tests to them. Admission tests for mature graduate applicants are a defective approach, because medical admissions panels will still miss out on the minority or miss out on mature or graduate applicants who would make very good doctors. So even the brightest applicant, after testing, can still be missed. The UCAS application system or method does not give the mature applicant the opportunity to express their attributes in full, especially where proficiencies are demonstrated as actual competency indicators. Such applicants should gain rightful entry into a degree program. This is probably one of the many reasons why potentially bright, mature graduate aspirants find it challenging to get recognized. There's works around this by Niven and team in 2013. It is quite preposterous if sole academic achievements are being used to determine which type of candidate enters a medical degree program. This does not determine that particular candidate will show more empathy, compassion, or more elegance. So there is a minority of graduate mature applicants who endeavor very differently, even when comparing mature graduates against each other. More importantly, these graduate and more mature applicants will value the impact of collaborations in medicine and how best to achieve excellence in patient care. These are not always obvious characteristics of a doctor aspirant. Medical admissions panels should scrutinize and be more open-minded with such applicants. Admissions should also reflect on good balance of academic effort, experiences, and consistency. The current process, including admission tests of applicants, almost compares the graduate, a mature applicant, with the A-level school leaver candidate, and there are general inconsistencies in the admission and selection strategy. And using A levels for school leavers is an excellent screening tool to predict potential competency and rigor of A-level students. In fact, A-level students should be complimented for demonstrating rigor early, but they are still premature in language fluency, and with respect to the understanding of the National Health Service. The mature graduate candidate, if very bright, will demonstrate originality and sophistication, and not just in science. The Medical Schools Council should interact in policy to separate the two populations of applicants. Quoting: so the humane physician can be characterized by four distinct qualities: technical competence, humanistic attitude, knowledge of humanistic concepts, and humanistic behavior. This quotation is taken out of a paper publication by Arnold and team in 1987. Certainly, graduate and mature applicants contribute diverse attitude and traits early. Further quoting: in the 1980s, applicants with an education in the humanities were thought to be a good way of developing more compassionate physicians. That's a direct quote that was taken out of a paper by Nielsen in 2003. So the current application process is: number one, defective; number two, sole catered for A-level school leaver applicants who demonstrate initial potential competency. Two application processes are required which justify entry criteria separately and with integrity. Again, in effect, the present application and selection criteria thus needs to reflect back to what the National Health Service principles and actual selection process should be based on these core principles. I'm now going to talk a little bit about mature applicants and selection. So the mature graduate applicant is to achieve a good honors degree, preferably in a scientific program, for example, the biomedical sciences, pharmacy, pharmacology, or biochemistry, for example, to name a few. And there are paper publications by several authors which highlight different initial areas of undergraduate study that mature postgraduate applicants can make. works by Dal Alba in 2002, Kaiser and team in 2009, and Searle and McHarg in 2000 and 2003 also, around 2003. Most medical schools now request mature graduate applicants to hold postgraduate qualifications. Indeed, an understanding of medical practices should be a prerequisite. The present application system is prevents sort of an assessment of the graduate mature candidates' attributes. At present, also a particular confounding issue is using a collaborative application process, which does not assess honorably. In comparing mature graduate applicants to each other, generally, it's interesting to learn that academic institutions will consider students of arts and humanity backgrounds over science, and so the criteria differ from one institution to the next. But in citing general institution declarations and policy, science backgrounds are now becoming a prerequisite in a majority. It should not be undermined or debated that possessing a humanities background should be of a less consideration, but now an applicant from the humanities is actually not enough. Mature graduate applicants who come from sort of lesser research or scientific driven programs will have issues in the future as more entities of practice will involve evidence-based medicine or EBM, critical appraisals and translational clinical science around everyday practices. Health practices are changing and new ones are generally emerging. Bright graduate mature applicants demonstrate autonomy, competencies, and still have thriving potential and can relate experience and knowledge well to the NHS, National Health Service. Now, to add a little bit more context around this, let's assume a mature graduate or applicant has been fighting to read medicine, has a humble degree qualification. In association, this individual is also adept, possesses unique qualities, and demonstrated via additional means. For example, conducted a variety of internships, academic, clinical, and community, been involved in professional memberships, charity organizations, published, and shown eloquence and perseverance in general, then really the present UCAS application system for this graduate mature applicant is not suitable or vindicated. Such a graduate mature applicant may have shown aptitude in numerous forms, and so this graduate mature applicant's background is not often realized through the UCAS process. The current application procedure is a concern. This thus means a graduate or mature applicant's finesse is not considered in depth. Their contribution is not being recognized. Admissions tests only allow a certain degree of assessment and analysis. Further, all applicants must and should realize all applicants must and should realize translational efforts and humanistic understanding from a variety of healthcare professional viewpoints. So unequivocally, institutions should be attracted by an applicant who has attained a diverse understanding and familiarity. potentially being able to contribute across health sectors. If medical students and or even postgraduates who are presently studying medicine today fall short of such crucial elements in aptitude, I'll say this again, even medical students and or even postgraduates who are actually presently studying medicine today fall short of such crucial elements in aptitude and flair. Where there is a potential for mature graduates and applicants to make good clinicians, these contenders should be given opportunity to express further talent, particularly where background attract dual roles, i.e. clinical and academic. A selection protocol is unfair if it disadvantages classes of people. Example, graduates. Classes of people in this context are graduates. By admitting them on the basis of features irrelevant to whether or not the graduate mature applicant will be a good doctor. There does seem to be defect in the UK medical admissions process by today's medical institutions. But guess what? These can actually be alleviated. Literature has informed an applicant's academic accomplishments are decent prerequisites appraised by grade point averages, and there are test entities that are dependable. So mature graduate applicants are attracted to medicines, for example, because of a desire to be autonomous and fundamentally avert disease and bring clarity, variety, and control. There's some context around this dating back to 1995 with a paper by Rolf and team in 95 and a paper by the same author Rolf and team in 2004. So the question is, why use a single application process for two groups of applicants? So it is crucial to scrutinize applications, but the present process is deformed. And there's another quotation I'm going to read two quotations from the same works. Number one, admissions criteria are expected to be fair, transparent, evidence-based, and legally defensible. The second, we believe that the use of a vast majority of non-cognitive admission criteria is not evidence-based, and that these criteria should not be a component of the selection process for medical schools. The author of the works was Bembasat and Bormo in 2007. So certainly there needs to be a clear pathway for mature applicants, and admissions should be using transparent criteria to differentiate A-level school leavers and mature graduate applicants in implementing two separate application processes. So there's works by Albanese and team in 2003, Cantor in 2009, Prideaux and McCrory in 2004, and Wilkinson and team in 2004. In this work, there's a table that highlights how medical admissions panels can set up their entry criteria and selection process of applicants more decisively. A bit about the discussion, a bit around this from a discussion point of view. So attaining academic requirements are of obvious significance for graduate mature applicants, but criteria needs to coalesce these to identify additional doctor quality indicators. A more rational and an efficient approach should be placed in the selection of graduate and mature applicants. And in the present investigation for the open quote or close quote right applicant, other values need to be observed, competency being the main. An excellent mature or graduate applicant may have demonstrated exquisite clinical proficiency on wards, community contribution, and shown finesse in diverse settings. The General Medical Council, or the GMC, also highlights best practice in a variety of health environments. The present application procedure should be a concern and an anxiety aptitude test or not. The application and selection process is also confusing. The present system does not allow a thorough consideration of mature graduate candidate applicants relating to the dire needs of tomorrow's doctors. And citing the following allowed further reflection relating back to the core principles of the National Health Service. Quoting, it's a direct quote from a paper by Nielsen, 2003. What we really require from our admissions process is a student who loves science and has a heart that never hardens, a temper that never tires, and a touch that never hurts. Graduate applicants should anticipate a separate application process, respectively. Further quoting, nationwide collaboration could provide opportunities for research to establish more efficient and effective ways of selecting tomorrow's doctors. It's a direct quote by paper from Powis and team in 2004. What medicine desperately requires is a candidate who bears fluency in medical and clinical research, exquisite mannerisms, empathy on a tremendous level, and is a clinician scientist aspirant. If an applicant is also a long-term patient who realizes translational efforts momentous to their own care, this is also a great advantage. Certainly, it is time to change the application process. A study asking the question, what does medicine signify to patients in undergraduate medical education? Despondently, not an iota of the participants mentioned scientific or medical or clinical research. This was works in Dal Alba in 2002, Kaiser and team in 2009. A-level school leaver applicants are accepted into medicine based on potential competencies, and for the applicant's competency can only really really be realized over time. Indeed, an aspect that requires reassessment for medical education includes the need to assess ways in which medical knowledge and medical care are viewed. Works by Dan Alba in 2002, Kaiser and team in 2009 highlight a bit more around that. Of importance is recognizing the importance of the larger roles of the doctor. Ultimately, care for a patient is on and off wards. Off wards means through research and ongoing professional development. Academic institutions need to further acknowledge the broader charisma and potentials of mature graduate applicants. Example, research clinicians, academics, governance inducers. Another quote from the paper by Nielsen in 2003. Medical schools no longer matriculate sufficient members of students who are deeply interested in science, and beyond neglect, one could also hypothesize that modern admissions committees actually resist applicants who have aptitude for scientific achievement. So in conclusion, there now needs to be a good balance and respect of larger attributes to the mature or graduate applicant by medical institutions. Part of the needed modification would be for institutions to reflect deeper on the core principles of the National Health Service and graduate mature applicant in whole. Additional merits would be research and publication efforts, contribution to clinical and or interventions. A separate entry application process is required for graduate mature applicants for a number of reasons, and there, as I mentioned, there is a table in this, and I'm not gonna decipher the table as part of this audio podcast, but I am gonna highlight some points here. A separate entry application process is required for the graduate and mature applicant for a number of reasons, and there are six-fold advantages for this implementation. Number one, a separate application process will better select tomorrow's doctors in accordance to the Medical Schools Council and the General Medical Council objectives. Number two, a separate entry application process would allow mature or graduate applicants to be better recognized for their vast attributes. Number three, a separate application process would allow would be less arbitrary. Number four, a separate entry application process will prevent or preclude a selection bias. Number five, a separate entry application process will set a more established balance between mature graduate and A-level school leaver applicants. And number six, a separate entry application process will help assess potential competency versus actual competency to be established. If there is a graduate or mature candidate who possesses a unique insight into medical practices, then this individual or individuals should be considered seriously. Doctors today need to know their patients' voices are important and influence decision-making processes as well. In essence, two populations of applicants exist. The entity solely justifies purpose for a separate application. This entity solely justifies purpose for a separate application process. Selection and admission of applicants should be maintained with balance, fairness, and justice. Instigating a separate application process and re-evaluating the larger credentials and criteria for the graduate mature applicant, aspirant doctor should be at the top of medical school's education agenda. At present, however, there is potential selection bias and there is discrimination comparing two groups. However, having a separate application process would provide medical admissions panels of how a mature graduate applicant's background reflects to the National Health Service values and its mission. Certainly, weight and justice should not fall short in balance. A general recommendation here is that for mature and graduate, for mature graduate applicants, the application process should invite them to put forward their CV or resume, a personal statement, and separate to the UCAS approach, demonstrating competency relating to medicine and reflecting back on the NHS National Health Service core principles. This would better represent medical applications from those particular applicants. As part of the conclusion, I want to say 2 application processes are required which justify entry criteria separately with integrity. And this paper overall proposes that there should be a separate application process, again, for the mature or graduate applicant, reflecting back on NHS National Health Service core principles. I want to say a few acknowledgements. I won't read out the list of references, but acknowledgement to Professor Ken Jones, Emeritus Professor in Immunology, United Kingdom. Acknowledgement to Professor and Emeritus Professor Tim Chambers, Professor in Pediatrics and Pediatric Nephrology from the United Kingdom. Acknowledgement to Dr. Mary McGraw, Consultant Pediatric Nephrologist in the United Kingdom. And also to Professor Moin Salim, Consultant Pediatric Nephrologist in the United Kingdom, for some of the laboratory perspective around this works. This paper is available through the Renal Patient Support Group, or the RPSG. It's available online. It's titled "A Fair Process for Graduate and Mature Applicants in the UK, Reflecting Back on NHS Principles," and it's available also through MedEd World. And again, this was published in 2013. I want to say thank you for those listening in on this audio podcast. This has been an audio podcast under the Labztorm Impact v.2, an audio podcast on studying medicine, a fair process for graduate mature candidate applicants in the United Kingdom. It's been another Storm Robotics production. Thank you for taking the time. It's been a pleasure.